It's been 12 years since the day I first arrived at Sydney Airport. I was young, I had no idea what was going to happen, but I had so much energy and curiosity about what was ahead of me. I came to Australia on a working holiday. I worked as a F&B attendant at a hotel. I completed my master's degree in professional accounting, became a chartered accountant, started my career as an assistant accountant, and now I'm working as an assistant manager in financial control and accounting. I had to learn a new language, adapt to a new culture, build a career from scratch. I literally had to figure out how to survive here. But it wasn't just hard. I had so much fun along the way, both professionally and personally. I genuinely loved learning English. Being able to speak English completely changed the direction of my life, and eventually that made me want to learn another language. So I started learning French. Studying French in Sydney could feel pretty lonely. So I started sharing my journey online, and yes, that became the channel that you're watching right now. Over the past few months, I've been working on so many different projects through this channel, and it has been incredibly rewarding. Last year, I passed the Delft B1 exam. It was challenging, but honestly, I had so much fun preparing for it. And I'm still really proud of myself for doing it. And outside of all of that, I met the love of my life. We got married. We bought our first home. I recently started a new job, and then I stopped. Hi everyone, welcome back to Jen's Story. Today I want to talk about something that I've been experiencing for the past 6 months, maybe even a little longer. And if my story happens to help someone who's going through something similar, that would make me really happy. For quite a few months, I had been feeling really lethargic, sluggish, and drained, especially earlier this year. I talked about this a little more in my previous video, but long story short, I bought an apartment with my husband in Sydney. We prepared a wedding in South Korea and got married and changed new jobs. 3 huge life events happened within around 6 months' time. My husband also got promoted earlier this year, so both of us were trying to navigate all of these changes happening at the same time. I was extremely busy, but I didn't feel productive at all. My mind was constantly occupied. I think that the mental exhaustion started draining my physical energy as well, if that makes sense. I stopped going to the gym. I used to be pretty consistent with the gym and Pilates. I even trained and ran City to Surf last year, but slowly all of the physical activity stopped. I just didn't have any energy to do anything anymore. I stopped studying French, I lost appetite, and after the wedding, I found out I had lost about 5 kg. I had very little motivation to do anything beyond what absolutely had to be done. At night, I couldn't fall asleep unless I was listening to something like YouTube, an audiobook, a podcast, anything. I needed background noise, because otherwise my brain would just keep going, random thoughts, things I needed to do, things I had forgotten to do, things I might need to do tomorrow. It just wouldn't switch off. And then winter came. To be honest, Sydney winters aren't exactly extreme, but somehow dark and cold mornings made everything feel even harder. Getting out of bed became more difficult. And I used to be such a morning person. Morning was always my most productive time of the day. But during this period, I was barely getting myself out of bed and making it to work. And while all of this was happening, I felt incredibly guilty. Guilty that I wasn't productive, I wasn't exercising, I wasn't studying French, I wasn't making YouTube videos, and mostly guilty that I wasn't the person I used to be. Natural light is coming in. Anyway, there is actually a phrase I recently came across in a book that I've been reading. It's called productive tension. So it describes that uncomfortable feeling you get when you know there are things you want or need to do, but you're not doing them. And that describes exactly how I felt. I wasn't really resting because even when I was doing nothing, there was always this tension in the background telling me you should be doing something. And I was scared. I genuinely had thoughts like, what if I live like this forever? What if the rest of my life is just me doing whatever is directly in front of me, take care of things that I have to do, but never motivated to do anything beyond that? What if I never go back to being that person who had so much energy and was genuinely excited about her days? I felt overwhelmed by the idea of starting again. I wanted to go back to how I used to be, but I had no idea where to start. And honestly, I felt really sad. It sometimes felt like I was simply living because life was happening and I had to keep up with it. But the strange thing is, I was actually happy with my life. Like, I love my husband. I love our new home. I was excited about my new job. There was nothing fundamentally wrong, but at the same time, something felt empty. For most of my life, there had always been something next, something to work towards, something to achieve. And all of a sudden, I felt I had just checked off so many of the things either the society or maybe just a younger version of myself thought I was supposed to do. Build a career, get qualified, buy a home, get married, and then what? What comes next? To be completely honest with you, doing nothing was also quite comfortable. I didn't go to the gym, I didn't study, I didn't plan videos, make videos. Yes, life was easier in some ways. It was like my body had energy, but my mind didn't. And that was also quite confusing because I kept thinking, but I actually like these things. No one forced me to study French or start YouTube. I chose to do all of those things because I genuinely enjoy them. So why couldn't I just go back to doing things I love? Going through this really uncomfortable period taught me a few things about myself. And honestly, that's one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video. The very first thing that I realized is that I misunderstood myself for a long time. I always thought I was a very consistent person, and apparently that's not entirely true. When I look back, I realized that for most of my adult life, I had deliberately put myself in environments where consistency was almost required. I moved to another country without an established support system. I had to think about my visa. I had to learn English, study, find work, build my career. There was always a very clear next step. And if I wanted to living the life I had chosen, I had to keep moving. So maybe I wasn't magically born with this amazing ability to stay consistent. Maybe my environment made consistency necessary. The second thing I realized is that at this stage of my life, there aren't that many people telling me what I'm supposed to do anymore. When and where I was growing up, there's usually a very obvious structure. Study hard, get into a good uni, graduate, find a job, build a career, and your successful life. There's always another assignment, another exam, another application, another deadline waiting for you. And at that time, I didn't really ask any question why I needed to do all of this. And eventually, that structure disappears. At work, nobody's going to design your entire career for you. In your personal life, nobody's going to sit you down and say, okay, Jenny, here's what you should work on for the next 3 years. Everyone is busy living their own lives. And to be fair, if somebody did tell you exactly what to do, there is no guarantee their version of a good life would actually be right for you. When I was younger, there was always something waiting for me to start. And now I've realized that nothing is waiting for me unless I created it. If I want something to happen, I have to decide what I want. I have to plan it. I have to initiate it. I have to build the environment around it. Otherwise, nothing happens. The last thing I learned was probably the hardest one for me. I have to accept that my life has changed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. For a long time, I kept comparing the current version of myself to the most productive version of myself from the past. And I would think that I used to be able to study for hours. I used to go to the gym all the time. I used to work full time and still make YouTube videos. So why can't I do that now? But that comparison isn't really fair, is it? Of course, I could study 8 hours a day when I was a student. I was a student. That was literally my job. And now I have a full-time career, my YouTube channel, a marriage, different responsibilities, and completely different priorities. Your capacity changes. Your priorities change. Your life changes. And maybe the goal shouldn't be to constantly recreate the most productive version of yourself from the past. Maybe the goal is to find the right rhythm that works for the person you are now. I had been so focused on asking, how do I go back to who I used to be? And eventually I realized that maybe that was the wrong question. I don't actually need to go backwards. I need to figure out how I want to live from here. And once I realized that, I stopped comparison. And one more thing that I found out is that for a month, I had been waiting for motivation to come back. I kept telling myself, after we move into the apartment, I'll start again. After the wedding, I'll start again. Once I settle into my new job, I'll start again. Maybe when winter is over, I'll feel better. There was always another point in the future when I thought I would magically become motivated again. But motivation didn't come back just because I waited for it. And I think this was the biggest shift for me. I stopped asking, how can I become motivated again? And I started asking, how can I create an environment where I can move forward even when I don't feel motivated? Because when I look back at all the times that I had been consistent, there was always some kind of structure, a deadline, a clear goal, an environment that supported the behavior, something that made the next step obvious. And this time, nobody was going to create that for me, so I decided to create myself.
Booking confirmed. Oh my god. Okay, booked. Oh my god, I'm doing it again.
You're doing it again. You're crazy.
Fighting! Okay.
I booked a flight to France and I registered for my next French exam, DELF B2. Am I ready for B2 right now? Absolutely not. I haven't properly studied French for almost a year. Even at my wedding, I had some French friends traveled all the way to South Korea to celebrate with us. And I ended up speaking almost entirely in English with them. And that actually made me quite sad. A couple of years ago, even with my broken French, I would try to have little conversations with them. But this time, I barely even try. And it reminded me that learning French was never just about getting a certificate. I wanted to speak another language because I loved the feeling of connecting with people through their language. I wanted another window into another culture. I wanted that part of my life back. So I booked a trip. I registered for my exam. Not because I suddenly woke up one morning feeling super motivated. No, I didn't. Not because I suddenly became super consistent version of myself. No, I didn't. Something changed in the way I was thinking about motivation, goals, and consistency. And that shift finally helped me stop waiting and start moving again. So if you want to know what changed and how I rebuild my French study routine from here, please stay tuned and check out my next video. 오랜만에 영어로 영상을 찍어봤는데요. 오늘도 영상 봐주신 여러분들 정말 감사합니다. 저는 앞으로도 여러분의 언어 공부 여정을 계속해서 응원할게요. 언어를 공부하고 계신 여러분은 지금 세상을 공부하고 계신 겁니다. 그럼 저는 다음 영상에서 뵐게요. 안녕!